Hello, everyone. This is Tengu. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm continuing our topic on top 20 ideas in clinical trials. Last week, we talked about PI oversight, and I hope that you enjoyed it. This week, I want to talk about regulatory compliance. And I promise I'm going to make it as easy as possible. What are the most essential things that people really need to know as they're running clinical trials? Or for those of you who are interested in this industry, regulatory compliance is key in the industry. It covers everything. But before I dive into that, the art for this week is emergence. And I'm so excited about it because it's about this emergence into something better. Emergence from the darkness that I've been in about regulatory compliance in clinical trials to a point where I really understand these concepts, and that way I can be an incredible clinical researcher. Go to our link tree and you can click on any of the links to follow the art process of emergence this week. Back to our topic, regulatory compliance. I have to look at my notes here while I'm speaking. The first thing I want to talk about is their top 5 things that you want to know about regulatory compliance. Patient safety is important in clinical trials. We all know that, right? Data integrity. The data is going to be submitted, and eventually that product should come to the market. So we need clean, quality data, right? Legal protection. Everybody wants to adhere to these legal regulations and requirements. Trust building, really essential in clinical trials. We work globally and we work cross-functionally, and we have to build that trust between each other. And then, of course, ethical standards, which could be global, it could be regional, and that's the backbone of our clinical trials. So let's begin. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The first thing is you have to know the rules. You have to think of compliance as your proverbs from all your elders, and they're all over the world. If you're in the APAC region, there are regional rules and country rules and local requirements, Europe, Africa, Latin America, okay, and North America and South America. And then we have the ICGCPs, which is really the highest level of ethical standards that govern clinical trials. The next thing you want to think about always is documentation and record keeping. I'm not going to belabor the point. You have to document, because if you don't document, it didn't happen. And also, just because you document it doesn't mean that it happened. So you want to really pay attention to that. Next, training and education. This is a highly regulated industry, so we do train. We train on, again, the ethical standards that govern the industry, but then in terms of the actual protocols that are being used to conduct the clinical trials, there is a lot of training. You have to understand what exactly the protocol requires, right? And then if it changes, then you need additional training. And if there are other pertinent documents to the conduct of the trial that change, you got to train on those. And especially as a principal investigator who's overseeing a clinical research site, you really want to make sure that you're personally trained. Everyone is involved in this level of training, whether it's the sponsor staff or the CRO, all the vendors. We all have to be trained and constantly retrained. We have evidence that we know exactly what we're doing, and that we're making sure that we're protecting the rights and well-being of the patients participating in our clinical trials. And then, of course, especially for the clinical research side, you want to pay attention to this. Think about training as a form of risk mitigation. If something goes wrong, maybe someone did not adhere to your SOPs, the informed consent was taken out of the way that your SOPs were written, you actually want to make sure that you retrain them. And it's not just training, there is retraining, using training as a form of risk mitigation. And by that, if something has occurred that is out of the norm, you deviated or you're not compliant, then you have to go to the root cause and make sure that staff are retrained so that does not repeat itself. Quality assurance and audits. This is the way to ensure that the trial is actually thriving. It's like a health check. So those do occur in clinical trials, and we also have inspections as well for regulatory authorities. Audits are part of the routine management of a clinical trial. Adverse event reporting. You want to make sure that you're reporting these events, whatever is going on with the patients according to what is defined per the protocol. You actually want to make sure those events are being reported. And then also, don't wait for the house to burn down and then start reporting this. If you see the first sign of smoke, make sure that you're actually up to date with the situation, and make sure to follow up these adverse events through the end of the trial or whatever your protocol actually requires. Ethical standards, yes, we do have ethics committees that ensure that the rights and welfare of the patients are protected. Know them. If you are at a clinical research site, you should know who your EC is and make sure that you understand what their requirements are. They typically would have their playbook or their handbook, and make sure that you read that and understand what the requirements are in terms of the expectations are for your site. Data management, we want to make sure that our data is complete, accurate, and secure. It's like a treasure chest. I want to guard it. I want to make sure that it's secure because these are patients' lives that we're dealing with here. And we have to make sure that we're guarding this treasure. Monitoring and supervision at so many levels. We have PI oversight, which we talked about last week. We have the monitoring by the sponsor. We have monitoring from vendors, CROs. But in essence, you want to think of monitoring as a way to make sure that we're steering the ship correctly, right? We're reading the protocol. We're making sure that we're adhering to those rules. We're looking at the storms that are upcoming and really saying, oh, maybe we shouldn't go in this direction. We wrote this. We have seen what's happening with this patient, or we wrote this protocol in a certain way. Maybe we should now revise to be another way. So it's basically navigating through the ocean of clinical trials management. And then, of course, communication is key. We work cross-functionally. We have to build trust amongst our teams, and nothing should be swept under the rug. There's no such thing in clinical trial. Something happens, we look at it in the face, no matter how horrible it is, and we say, okay, what exactly can we do to address this situation? How can we ensure that it doesn't occur anymore? And then the last one is cultural and local consideration. This is huge, especially working at a global level. We have to deal with so many different countries. We have to respect each other, respect our local standards and local regulations and local guidelines and cultural beliefs and norms. Very important. Those are the 10 points that I put together. The first one, again, is you want to know the rules. The second is documentation and record keeping, training and education, quality assurance and audits, adverse event reporting, ethical considerations, monitoring and supervision, communication, cultural and local considerations. Well, that's it in a nutshell. That's regulatory compliance. I hope it wasn't a mouthful. But what I want you to take away from this is you really want to start looking at this industry as highly regulated and looking at some of the things that are actually discussed and seeing how you can apply those to the work that you're currently doing in clinical trials. So I thank you for listening. If you like this video, please comment below, ask questions. Additionally, if you have questions for me, go to the Achaibo link tree, and there's so many ways that you can get a hold of me. I'm also going to start our monthly free Q&A calls coming up in the next few months. And that will be a great way for me to address some of the questions that have been coming up in the past year. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.